Facepalm America. I'm Beowulf Rockland. Facepalmamerica.com is a place where you can go for more information about the show and to connect with us on social media, listen to past episodes, etc., etc. We've all seen the rise in racial hatred, hate speech, hate crimes in America since the ascendance of Donald Trump to national prominence, but it has always existed. Even during times that we've considered this country to be at its most enlightened. But there have been people who have dedicated their lives at great personal risk to stopping it. And today we're lucky to be able to speak with two of them. Madsen Browning and Tawny Browning. They are the authors of The Hate Next Door, Undercover Within the New Face of White Supremacy. Matt, Tawny, welcome to Facepalm America. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us. We're so glad to be here.
Absolutely.
I loved your intro because, everyone thinks that this hate thing just started and where did it come from? And everyone, it's been around since the beginning of time. And Matt's been tracking it for quite a while. Yeah,
no, I understand that. And I suppose I come to it myself from some level of personal experience. I mean, back in the 1980s, I had, members of my family show me, editions of like the White Aryan Resistance, a newspaper that came out from Southern California. I've been taken to gun shows as a young person, where they had. I'm struggling to remember the name of the book. But it's the well-known one in which basically there's the Turner Diaries. Thank you so much. In which there's a white counter-revolution or something like that. So I've been well aware of the fact that there is a culture like this, a deeply ingrained one for quite some time, and it's certainly tied into the rest of our problematic history. So This is something that's like coming to the fore and bubbling up in a way, but it's always been there beneath the surface. And I'm so glad that you guys have worked on this for such a long time. How did that evolve for you? How did you get into being undercover and ferreting out these groups? Like, how did that start?
Well, for me, it started with a skinhead trying to kill me. Yeah,
wow.
The typical. Yeah, that'll make that happen. This your typical fighting over a gun after a foot pursuit. Come to find out, he was a skinhead. 3 weeks later, after he tried to kill me, he actually shot a police officer in the back. So and then from there, I wanted to do something. I worked on the gang squad, and it was a lot of the gangs that we were working were Hispanic and black gangs. So I wanted to do something that I could take more of a lead role on, and it ended up being white supremacy. And once I joined the National Alliance and became a member, I mean, everything just skyrocketed from there.
So
it was shocking to see that there was coming from where I came from, a little bit of a Disney-esque type background. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. I had no idea how close this was to all of us.
And Matt, Tawny, where did you each come from individually? Like what were your individual backgrounds both before and during your marriage? What sort of awareness of all of this did each of you bring to it?
None. I wanted to be a country singer. I mean, that's really where, I had no idea. I grew up in a part of Arizona that's very diverse. I would say at least 30% of all of my grade school classes were Hispanic, at least. Sometimes it would go the other way. And we loved each other because we loved each other. And people say you can't have done that, but we really did. And if you ask my Hispanic friends, it was the same way. That's how we grew up. Yeah. I didn't know people hated.
Yeah. Well, talking a little bit about the background that I spoke about, I grew up in very liberal, very progressive Marin County, California, just north of San Francisco. Also, very, very white Marin County, California. So it's possible in all places, and it really exists in all places. Matt, talk about your law enforcement background and how this became a part of what you did and do.
Well, my law enforcement background, I mean, it started. Do you want to know like everything from the beginning, the academy, who did patrol and all that stuff, or
Well,
just
yeah, I mean, not so much necessarily why you became involved in law enforcement specifically, but how this became central to what you did as a part of law enforcement and how it evolved from there to become the center of what you do beyond that particular part of your career?
Well, I think I just, like I said, man, when somebody comes after you, you take, you take it personal.
Right.
And so from that time on, it just became a personal, almost something driving me to go after these things. And when you start understanding the ideology of the different groups, and you start understanding how the person is making up these different groups, then you start seeing the crimes that these groups and people commit. Right. And once you get to the crimes, you just can't let that stuff go. You don't right. attack somebody because they're Hispanic or black or gay or Jewish or anything else. And that was the driving force for me. Is I just wanted to make a difference. Somehow I just wanted to do my thing to make a difference. And I had no idea that it would explode the way it did.
And when you see it and for Matt at least, you have to do. And it was not something that we knew but prior to him getting involved.
And this was in the context of you being a police officer in Arizona, correct? Okay.
Yeah, for sure. That was when I was a police officer, but it doesn't stop because we also, back in 2005, we organized a group called the Skinhead Intelligence Network, which the name has changed to the Supremacist Intelligence Network. And we brought information into this group, and from that information, we were able to track and monitor hate groups and haters throughout not just the United States, but throughout the world. And so we continue to do that now. We just can't stop. We're too far into it.
So how did you begin to infiltrate these groups? How did you gain trust within these groups? And what has the pattern been once you've become a part of them, and how do you expose them and bring them to justice?
Well, my job as an undercover guy was intelligence. My undercover work was primarily intelligence-based and intelligence-driven.
Right.
Because of that, and I go into the meetings, I would have to, in my mind, of course, I document first in my mind who's here, how many people are part of this crew, how many people are part of the National Alliance, who's coming together. And then you just start separating, okay, we have street-level skinheads hooking up with national-level National Alliance or the Klan or the nation's creators, whoever it might be, and you just start linking things together, and before you know it, you have a flow chart in your mind of all the different hate and where it goes. Then when a crime occurs that you find out about or that you see, you're able to link that person with that crime because you know the ideology, you know who they are, they talk, you listen, you hang out, you get the information, and next you know, you got murderers in prison.
And then you're able to provide the key linking evidence that allows these individuals to be prosecuted.
Yeah, here's the best way to describe it. You have all different kinds of undercover police officers, whether they're drug cops or organized crime or whatever it is. Mine was the intelligence gathering undercover work. I didn't need to go buy a 20 rock from a skinhead. They weren't slinging dope. I didn't need to do 3 buys, hit it with a warrant, and on to the next case. Mine was developing long-term intelligence on organizations and people so you can track and monitor the hate, because as soon as an act of violence is committed is when the crime occurs.
Right.
And so knowing who the players are, you're able to help with prosecution. You're able to put together cases. You're able to help with writing search warrants. You're able to do all these things because you know who the players are.
So he wasn't necessarily the front guy when the arrest would come.
Right.
He was the one that was sitting behind telling the front guy what to ask.
Yeah, I didn't want to be in front. Forget that noise.
And we kind of do chronicle in that and the hate next door, how that all went down, how he didn't go 13 years without an arrest. He was just gathering the information so that the arrest could be made by other people, by other cops.
Gotcha. How did gathering this key information impact you personally? How did it impact your marriage? Because I'm sure spending time in an environment like that must have, like, it's got to be emotionally toxic. What do you bring home with you, and how do you deal with that?
This is probably a better question for Tani, but studies have shown that when your brain is constantly when hate is constantly put into your head, your brain changes. Chemically, the chemical makeups within your brain change. The neural pathways change. Things are shut down. Things are grown.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, Tani, I say it all the time. Tani and my kids are the reason why I'm still alive now. It's just, in order to get rid of hate, you got to add love. In order to get rid of hate, you have to add importance. You have to have people at a home supporting you and loving you. So when you do leave a Klan rally or a World Church of Creator meeting, you're not coming home spewing the hate that you just heard.
Yeah. Well, and Matt said something very important right at the very beginning. He said, Ton, this is not hate. We're not born to hate. It's learned. And so often it's learned at home. Kind of what you were talking about at the beginning of the segment. And I just knew that we had to create something at home for him to come home to that reminded him that the world isn't ugly, that there's peace and love and goodness. And even if it's only right here in this home. So that's kind of what we did.
But
that's not always sustainable either, though. That's kind of what we found out.
A very balanced, ordinary relationship in the context of just the world broadly is not necessarily easy to sustain, but these are extraordinary pressures, certainly.
Yeah, and so I remembered there was a couple times where I was losing him. He wasn't him. Yeah. And I was losing me a little bit. I was like, look, I didn't get married to take these kids and me to church alone. Yeah. I got married to have a partner. So we had some of those more difficult conversations when he was so consumed. And to his credit, he listened.
How did
it wouldn't have mattered what I did if he wasn't receptive to it as well.
How did it impact your kids? Because I mean, that is what I would most worry about, and that in my life I have done everything that I can to make sure that any traces of that, hatred that was passed along to me, anything like that would not make it to the next generation. Was that in your minds, and how did you deal with that and try to insulate your children from that toxicity?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why the book was even written, is because our kids didn't know really what their dad did, and they had no idea what their mom did. Yeah. So that's when I retired, Tani said, you know what, you got to write these stories down. Number one, to get them out of your head, to get your brain straight. Mm-hmm. But the kids also need to know what their dad did. And so that's why we wrote the book to start with. You know what, as time went on and our kids got older, I would get a picture on my phone of a guy with a tattoo of an 88 or a 14, that he's standing behind at a grocery store. When my kids would go to a show somewhere, they send me a picture. Hey, does this mean anything? So they knew, they know what they don't want in their lives. Yeah. And they know that they want the goodness. And that teaching all came from Tani, because I was still trying to get all the garbage out while Tani was preaching, hey, you know what? Our home is like Disneyland. Let's have a fun. It's all family time. Let's do what we need to do.
Well, and I told them their dad was a superhero, and that it was our job to help support, at the level that they could take. But, my 6-year-old, it has its impact. He was sleeping with a knife under his pillow, so when you start seeing and discovering these kind of things, you're like, this is impacting us all. Matt is in contact with a skinhead right now. How long is he in?
Oh, he got 32 years.
One of the guys that he put away for 32 years, he recently reached out and apologized to the family for what he put us through, which was pretty incredible. We actually, they wanted to put it into the book, The Hate Next Door. So it's that whole story and letter is there now.
Well, I mean, let's talk about some of those hateful individuals now. I mean, I guess first off, just based on what you said, how often when there is someone who has been called out or prosecuted or imprisoned for something hateful that they've done, how often do they have that moment of reflection? How often is there a moment where they realize this is a call to turn my life around, and they're able to do that?
Well, now
Great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because now you're getting into the ideologies and the mindsets of these guys. And so when they're convicted of a crime, of course, when at sentencing hearing, they never say anything at all.
Right.
And when they go into the prison system is when they need to make that decision. So some of these guys, they go into the prison system and decide for themselves, I want nothing to do with this world. I'm going to live my own. I'll do my time and get out. While the other ones will hook up with your Aryan Brotherhoods or your Peckerwoods or your your prison skins and whoever there might be. Those are the guys who will not change. You cannot change. They have zero remorse. And those are the guys who are going to put the hits on you and come after you if they ever get out of prison. Because that's just, again, when you consume with hate, you will always hate unless you have something to replace that hate. Yeah. And in our situation, I was lucky, back to Tani, because Tani injected the love that was able to push the hate away. When you go to prison, what made it different for Sean was Sean had a decision in his mind. I can't live like this. I don't want to live like this. Right. I want a life after I get out of prison. So he covered up all his racist tattoos. He, started studying on different things and learning for himself that this is all a bunch of crap.
And that was a guy that definitely grew up with hate in his home, and that he learned it at home. And one of the last ones, at least I ever expected to reform himself at all.
How do you get more Seans as opposed to the people who are just consumed with hate? How do you provide or help people to find that foundation of love that they need in order to make that switch?
I find that getting a person to leave a hate group is like getting a person to lose weight.
That's bad news for me.
That's why it's bad news for everybody. Yeah. Because until you make that decision to make the change in your life, you're going to continue doing what you're doing. Something has to happen within your life to say, and I mean, I go through it every day. Do I really want to drink that? Do I really want to eat that?
Yeah.
Do I want to live and see my grandkids? Do I want to consume that stuff? And hate's no different. Do I really want to listen to another Screwdriver song or Bound for Glory? Do I want to read another Klan letter? Do I want to put this stuff in my body and in my brain that's going to cause me to act out? And so hate is a conscious decision. You decide to hate, you have to decide not to hate, and then you have to bring in something, whether it's like we talk about in the book, the different, a lacrosse stick, a football, a baseball, a volleyball, whatever it is that you can do to replace the hate, you need to do.
And I'm not meaning to turn this on you, but you were around some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So what was it for you that kept you away from that? I think we've got to give kids an identity away from whatever that kind of surrounding, and make sure that they feel loved at home, and that we give them a community or something so they don't have to choose the hate. Yeah.
It's I don't know. I mean, it's a very good question, and I think it's completely legitimate to turn it back around on me, because I was in a situation that it's difficult to describe, that was not as thoroughly saturated as the situations that you're describing, but there were threads of it that were very clearly there, especially for portions of my childhood. Yet at the same time, I also lived in a community which was much more open and accepting. So I had that possibility of alternative, networks and ideas around me. So I guess never fully attached in that way, which people often do. And then when I became an adult, there were just many, other ideas and people who did love me who were not even close to that kind of ideology. And so I guess that's really it. Just providing really as many opportunities, opportunities for connection and caring as possible.
Absolutely.
I guess that's what we all need really to progress in our lives.
We talk about that in the Hate Next Door is like, this isn't a death sentence if you find your child involved in this. But the thing that we need to be really concerned and open to is that the threat is all around us. It's not knuckle dragging backwoods, uneducated people that are getting involved in this. We've dealt with kids whose parents are a brain surgeon and an attorney. Yeah. So, that we're open to what's out there. That's why we wrote the book. A lot of the reason.
And we really hope that the book is successful. We do. We didn't just write The Hate Next Door just to write a book and put our lives out so everybody can read us and know about us. But we put the book out so we can start a line of communication.
Yes.
And whether it's in high school that we start this communication and work your way through, I hope in the colleges and the universities, but most importantly, I hope our politicians and our leaders can actually come together and talk. Mm-hmm. I have stories in the book that, describe the state senator that I became involved with because he was a hater. And so
be careful.
I'll call it like it is. But we need a good, positive example for kids to see. And so when they turn on the news, they're not seeing a Democrat and Republican arguing. Yeah. Instead, we're seeing a Democrat and Republican actually sitting down, talking, and coming up with the solutions. Yeah. And that's the big problem right now is that we need to talk. We need to talk to our kids. We need to talk to our educators, and we need to talk to our leaders.
If you could sit down and say one thing to a leader, a politician, to get the message across of what needed to happen to change and to turn people away from hatred, what would that be? And what would you say to someone, a young person, in high school who's been exposed to this stuff? What would you say to them?
Well, let me just say the high school, and then I'll let him go because he's brilliant at this. But I would say the high schooler, haters gonna hate. Don't let it be you. You can do better.
Yeah.
And I think that in high school, what I would say is you're the future. Make a difference. We don't have to, these politicians we have now, we don't have to follow their leads. We don't have to be like them. We can make our decisions for ourselves, and we can be better for the community and for this nation, and quite honestly for the world. Our SIN organization is worldwide. We have law enforcement all over the world, but everybody that's part of it, it's the same thing.
They have the same story.
There's nobody talking. Everybody's arguing. To the politician and to our leaders, is really simple. Our kids are listening to you and following your examples. Knock it off, communicate, quit yelling at each other and calling each other names, and quit promoting an agenda that's only for you and not for everybody else. And that's how things are going to change.
And I really love that, because I think that if these are brilliant people that got themselves to brilliant people that got themselves into these positions, but if we have an agenda, there is a personal agenda, we're not going to find solutions. So if we really come together, leave our agendas at the door, come together, there are solutions. And this is for our children, as you spoke of earlier. We need to do this for our children. Past generations have wanted to leave a better America for our children. Is that our goal as well? Are we doing our part?
I've never been asked that question, ever. What would you tell a politician?
Well, we got to tell them something, because they're taking us in the wrong direction. And what I see again and again, from my perspective, is leaders who aren't necessarily filled with hatred, but because they see their future, the future of their own careers, in a movement that is strongly associated with hatred, they are willing to let that pass. And that is such a huge mistake. And that has got to be called out.
That's got to be called out. The rhetoric has to be called out. The catchphrases need to be called out.
Yeah.
The things that are said to rally up a specific community or gender or anything else, that needs to be called out. And what needs to be called out, most importantly, I think, is the ideology that people have in regards to, number one, where they've been. You have a unique experience where you're from, because the Pacific Northwest at one time was the motherland. You had the Order there, you had the Aryan Nations there, you had war skins, Volksfront.
There was a play called God's Country, if I'm remembering correctly, and it was about the people who murdered Denver talk show host Alan Berg.
Yeah.
And they were talking about my neck of the woods.
Yeah,
God's country.
And that's this very important thing, is that the guys that murdered the guy in Denver, the talk show host, Mr. Berg, those were members of the Order. So it's Robert Matthews, David Lane, and all those guys. Robert Matthews is an Arizona boy, born and raised in Arizona. He grew up maybe a mile from my house. But he went from Arizona to Washington. Why did he go to Washington? Then he went to Idaho. Well, why did he go to Idaho? And that's what we do. That's what Tanya and I do, is we track and look at these guys. And we have to understand the ideology of not just Idaho or Washington, but what's going on in Arizona. Arizona is all about the border issues. So the hate groups have a large hatred towards the immigrants and Hispanics. As you work further east, it's more of the anti-Muslim, anti-Islam, anti-Jew. And you got to look and understand about what's going on. And that's why ideology is so important to understand. And history is important.
Well, and I love what you said, because it's what you always say, is there's no turf for the white boys.
There's no borders.
Yeah.
Hate travels.
Yeah. It mutates from time to time, but it travels very well, unfortunately. Where can folks find out more about the Skinhead Information Network, assist, contribute to what you do? How can they help more?
Well, what we've changed the name to the Supremacist Intelligence Network, because it just, we're not just about skinheads. We're about every organization that thinks they're better than somebody else. Doesn't matter if you're left, right, anything else. You can contact us at go to our website at mattandtawny.com.
That's MATTANTAWNI.com.
Great.
And give us a shout. Let us know how you can help, what you'd like to do. We're definitely talking, and especially law enforcement. We have law enforcement in every state that are affiliated with SIN all over the world. And this isn't just a law enforcement problem. This is an everybody problem.
And if we can get us talking, I mean, that's kind of our message. I guess it would be love and let's all start talking. If we can get talking, there's brilliant minds. It doesn't have to be this deep. There are things that we can do to make America better. Really, there is. Yeah.
Not make it great, but make it better and make it, loving and make it sane. I
didn't even mean to go there, but yes, there are. But there really are things. Leave the agenda at the door. There's something we can all do to make this a more fruitful and environment for our children and for us and where we want to be.
Absolutely. Again, Matt and Tawny Browning, the authors of The Hate Next Door, Undercover Within the New Face of White Supremacy. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for writing this book, and thank you for engaging in this struggle. It's really important, and especially now, but moving forward, it will continue to be. Thank you so much, and thank you for speaking with us on Facepalm America.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I'm Beowulf Rockland. This is Facepalm America. FacepalmAmerica.com, again, is where you can go to listen to past episodes, connect with us on social media, listen to everything that we do, and please share this episode with a friend. Share it on social media if you enjoyed it. You can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. That helps what we do. It helps get the messages of people like Matt and Tawny Browning across. Thank you for listening, and until next time, enjoy the day.